Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome, excuse me, loud. It's a present. Thank you. Pleasure to welcome, maybe not. Maybe it's not a pleasure. Here we go. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you to the December 5th Forsyth County Board of Commissioners meeting. We will actually follow this meeting with a first briefing for the December 19th meeting. We're going to begin our meeting with an invocation by Brother Patrick Acosta, Church of the Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. It'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Richard Linville. Please stand if you're able. Pastor Acosta, please come forward.
Our dear, kind Heavenly Father, we are grateful this day that we can gather together as our leaders help to guide the people of Forsyth County. We're grateful for this time of year as we remember Thee and Thy Son, and we ask a special blessing upon those who cannot attend, whether they be sick or afflicted, that they may feel of Thy love. We also ask a special blessing as we remember those who are in need of heart charity, that we may open our hearts and our minds and our efforts to help those in this giving season. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again, Brother Acosta. Citizens who are interested in participating in the public session portion of the meeting, you actually can do so by calling 336-422-1200, and you will be placed on hold until the public session begins. For those of you in the audience who wish to speak, you need to complete a small little speaker card outside, and if you haven't done it, you can actually do it right now and just hand it to our clerk, Ashley Matthews, at the end of the dais. The first two items on the agenda today are zoning petitions. Front Street Wahlberg LLC, known as the zoning dockets F-1646 and 1647. The petitioner has requested to withdraw both of those zoning petitions, and I'd like to request that we have a motion to accept their withdrawals. Is there such a motion?
Move approval.
Motion by Vice Chair Wisenhunt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. The third item of the agenda is a public hearing on the zoning petition of Perimeter Point Properties, LLC, from AG to limited industrial special use, with uses as set forth in the ordinance of zoning docket F-1648. Chris Murphy, our planning zoning and development services director, is going to give us a brief overview of the request.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. This is a request of petitioner Point Properties LLC to rezone 13.9 acres located at the southwest intersection of Rural Hall Germantown Road and McGee Road from AG to limited industrial special use. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It is located within GMA 5, the rural area, again along Highway 65 between Rural Hall and Germantown. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, you see it is located on the east side of McGee Road, just south of Rural Hall, Germantown Road. Subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. You can see that the property has already been graded. And from some other photos, you will see that there already is gravel and the storage of some materials on the site. This is the subject property shown on the area plan, the Rural Hall area plan update, which was completed in the late 2010s. It recommends residential for this piece of property. This is looking north along McGee Road. You see the zoning sign. The subject property is to the left of this image. This is looking west at the access point from McGee Road into the site. This is looking south into the subject property. Again, you see gravel, storage building, and I believe some barricades and sign erection materials. Again, this contractor does do a lot of work for NCDOT in traffic maintenance and sign installation, putting up barrels, barricades, and signage. Again, just looking west further into the subject property. This is a site plan that was submitted as part of the request. This site plan would be binding, so the project would have to be developed per this plan. There is a substantial area of woods that is shown to remain. There is a stormwater management pond that is shown. Again, as we've looked at the photos, this is already in place. So essentially what is there is what will be if this were to be approved. This went to the planning board. Summary of some of the items. The proposed use is anticipated to generate minimal traffic. However, the traffic that will be generated will more than likely be with heavy vehicles, which could have an adverse impact upon adjoining properties. The request may encourage the spread of inappropriate industrial encroachment in a GMA 5. The request is consistent with both the recommendations of Legacy 2030 and the adopted area plan. However, the site design and buffering should eliminate most of those off-site impacts associated with the request. This was heard by the planning board at their October 10th, 2024 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition. Following the public hearing, the planning board discussed the item. Through this discussion, the petitioner volunteered to remove the use manufacturing A from the request. With the removal of manufacturing A, the planning board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this request to the planning board. Since that time, this item was briefed at your last two meetings, including one on Monday. There was a question associated with about sandblasting. I did reach out and talk to the petitioner and the petitioner's engineer. They were agreeable to a condition that basically said there would be no sandblasting on the property, and that has already been included in your packet in the written consent to conditions that they have signed and notarized. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris? All righty. Ma'am, we got getting ready to have a hearing, and there'll be other opportunities. Okay? All righty. This is a public hearing, and speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor of this request, up to 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. And is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? I do want to get my timer straight before we start. Sorry. "15 minutes. Okay. Beginning.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Caitlin Jackson. I'm with Tuggle Duggins. Our address is 400 Bellamede Street, Suite 800, Greensboro. I here represent Perimeter Point Properties, and we are here to answer any questions if the board has any, or anybody in the public. With me is Chris Fletcher, who owns the property and will be doing all of the construction there.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes,
Fletcher.
sir. To answer the lady's question about what you said, it says it's just a storage lot. We don't operate out of it. We operate down in Winston-Salem off of Indiana Avenue. We just completed the project out there in Rural Hall, all the signs out there. This is a straight storage yard.
I do have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you live near this site?
No, I'm actually building a home. I bought 250 acres down there total, and I am building a house further back in the residential part.
Okay, so you do not live near this site?
Not currently, but my house is under construction there.
Okay.
Not at this site, but on the 250 acres that I purchased.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request? Right. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Right. Well, I will declare the public hearing closed. All righty. Any questions? Are we ready to vote?
All I'd ask is the lady who seemed in the red back there was indicating she wanted to ask some question or something, so maybe she didn't.
I believe he answered my question before, saying that it would be used for storage of those
Yes.
items, and that is what it's being used for. My question would be, now What consideration does this have since Rural Hall has decided to annex this area possibly?
Well, I do want to be clear on the annexation part. Rural Hall does not have the authority, nor does any city have the authority to annex property anymore. They used to be able to, but they cannot. The only way they can annex property is to actually have voluntary annexation. And I do think that some letters have been sent out to residents in Rural Hall who live in the fire service district, which is not a part of Rural Hall.
Correct.
And they have asked if you were interested. They'd be glad to welcome you if you would like to voluntarily, join that. But they cannot take you over. That is not within their authority.
They can't force annexation.
They cannot. In fact, even as recently as yesterday and today, I've actually communicated, because a comment, we've heard a lot about this. It's really not an item on our agenda, but you have raised the question. And I would say, since you are here, how about telling us your name?
My name is Ivy Banner.
Okay, that's good. We've got that. And
My parents live on the property, and that's adjacent on Highway 65 to where Mr. Fletcher is building.
I got you. Anyway, back to I've spoken with the legislature, actually, I've communicated by text, to be accurate, with the legislature Representative Kyle Hall, who represents the Rural Hall area. And he said he has had, because there was a comment made that perhaps the legislature was going to intervene somewhere in this Rural Hall issue. And he assured me he has had no conversation with the town of Rural Hall. So at this point, I believe the law stands, hasn't changed. They cannot annex, unless you voluntarily ask for it. I mean, if you voluntarily ask for it, you're welcome
They've had
to
a lot of meetings to
do
discuss
that.
annexation.
So that's it's a great opportunity to clear the air on that. We've had just a few calls about that issue.
Thank you so much.
So I'm glad to be able to do that. So anyway,
Thank
a little bit out of order and character.
Sorry,
but
I apologize.
No, it's not your fault. It's not anything. Go ahead. Thank you. Ma'am, do you have exactly the same question?
Yes, sir, I do. I was going to put my name on the record if I may.
All right.
Our property backs up to Fletcher.
Sir, if I may, just because Gordon's not here, just to preserve the decision this board makes, can you reopen the public hearing?
I can do that.
Thank you, sir.
Happy to but are you speaking for or against the property in question?
As long as Mr. Fletcher doesn't try to come on our side of the property, we have a little less than 100 acres, 4 houses, been in the family 125 years. Gray, Phyllis, Jennifer Grubbs. We don't want that zoning change. We are currently ag, except for those 4 houses. We want to stay that way, particularly as you just addressed. Rural Hall Suburban Fire District is attempting to annex 2,300 households that do not want to be annexed.
It's the town of Rural Hall.
Correct.
Attempting to annex those who live in the fire district.
Correct.
That, by the way, you pay your fire tax to us.
Right.
We contract with the town of Rural Hall in order to provide the fire service.
$1.50 out of 100. So they
Yes.
want to go up to 0.334 is my understanding.
If you were to join the town of Rural Hall.
We don't
All right,
try to
gotcha.
do that. I just want to put that on public record.
That
we're
that is
at-
fine, and
Thank you.
we're clear. And your zoning is not going to change unless you request it.
Good. We don't want that to change either.
I mean, there's no zoning changes because of that.
Great. Thanks, sir, for letting me speak.
All righty, that's good. Now, is there anyone else? We still have actually 8 minutes left out of the 15. And there was time left for both for and against. Now, I just want to make sure, has everyone had an opportunity who would like to speak for or against this particular petition to do so? Okay. In addition to telling us your name and address, please tell us whether you're for or against, so we're clear on that.
Okay, my name is Suzanne Eppermanis, and my address is 204 Canterbury Trail in Winston-Salem. So I do not live anywhere close to this affected property. I'm not sure if my position is for or against. I have perhaps more of a question. When I read the bullet point on the presenter's slide that said initially the request was not consistent with Legacy 2030, But then I later heard the staff professionals say that upon the petitioners voluntarily pulling back manufacturing A, that the planning board then voted unanimously. So I guess my only position as a citizen is a cautionary position. I want to make sure that the planning documents that we're putting together that we put for Legacy 23, and now all of the effort and energy going into 2045, which city and planning forces are working together, I want to still just make sure that we are adhering to the integrity of those documents. So call mine a down-the-middle cautionary comment/question.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else? One clarification.
Looking at this slide, I just want to make something known. If you're not familiar, that front part there, I own that as well, that's 6 acres. That's zoned LI. What I'm doing where there's yellows at, I can do that there if I wish. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. I'm trying to do it with a buffer so you don't see it. It's not an eyesore. This stuff, the structures and the signs, stuff that I really like, you may not like to see them on your ride home. But if I get turned down today, I plan on taking those trees out and just moving it front where I can use it. Thank you.
Appreciate that clarification. We have 6 minutes left. Anyone else wishing to make quite an interesting public hearing today? All righty. I'm going to declare that the hearing is closed. We're now the second time closed. All right. Do we have a motion?
I do. Motion to approve zoning map amendment F-1648 and statement of consistency with comprehensive plan. I move that the zoning map amendment F-1648, including site plan and special use district permit, be approved on the basis of the following. The proposed special use zoning map amendment is petitioned by Pyramid Point Properties, LLC, to rezone a 13.9 acre piece of property from AG to LIS, Limited Industrial Building Contractor, Heavy Building Contractor, General, and Service B, is inconsistent with the recommendations of the Legacy Comprehensive Plan, but is reasonable or in the public interest because, number one, the subject property, undeveloped land, is located at 8032 McGee Road, which is in the southwest corner of Rural Hall, Germantown Road, and McGee Road, and is adjacent to property zoned LI, RS20, and AG, with adjacent uses of a railroad right-of-way, single-family homes, and undeveloped land. Number two, the proposed LIS zoning is primarily intended to accommodate limited manufacturing, wholesaling, warehousing, research and development, and related commercial and service activities which, in their normal operations, have little or no adverse effect upon adjoining properties in growth management areas 1, 2, 3, and 4, and metro activity centers. Number three, the proposed site plan features a 2,500 square foot multi-use office, maintenance and storage building, 2 storage container structures, and parking. Number four, the site does not have access to public water or sewer. And number five, the subject property is located in a growth management area 5 and is inconsistent with the Legacy Comprehensive Plan and the Rural Hall Area Plan update, which recommends large lot residential development, but the proposed use is consistent to adjacent LI zoning and will generate minimal traffic. And that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Woodbury. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. I see none opposed. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the zoning petition of Wake Forest University Health Sciences from IPS to IPS with uses as set forth in the ordinance of zoning docket F-1650. And again, Chris Murphy, our Planning and Development Services Director, will give us a brief overview of the request.
Good afternoon again, Chairman, members of the Board of County Commissioners. This is a request of Wake Forest Health Sciences to rezone 6.72 acres of property out on Welfare Road, south of Log Cabin Road, from IPS to IPS, essentially a site plan amendment. This is a subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It is located within GMA 4, which is a future growth area. It is, when I say on the county line, it's literally on the county line. It is actually split by the Davidson County-Forsyth County line. And as we will see in a few minutes, that the portion in Davidson County has already gone through their approval process. Subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, you see the county line is the heavy line. The red outline above that is the IPS zoned property of the Clarkson campus. And the yellow area is the area that is under consideration today. The same outline shown on the countywide aerial imagery. Again, on the county line, there is development on the site for the Clarkson campus as a biomedical research facility. This is the subject property shown on the Southwest Suburban Area Plan update completed in the mid-2010s, and it recommends IP or institutional for the subject property. A number of site photos. Again, there were some concerns that were sent to us related to some traffic issues, the way Friedberg interacts with Welfare Road. So we had several images of that intersection, but I believe they had gotten satisfactory response from NCDOT, so no one showed up to speak in opposition at the hearing, but that's why we have a number of photos. This is looking east at the intersection of Welfare Road and Friedberg Church Road. The subject property is about 3,000 feet to the west of this image. This is looking southwest at that same intersection. This is where Friedberg Church Road continues going further to the west-southwest, and Welfare Road takes off to the west. Again, the subject property is about 3,000 feet west of this intersection. And this is looking west from the intersection of Welfare Road and Friedberg Church Road. The subject property is again about 3,000 feet west, but this is just looking down Welfare Road towards that property. This is looking from Welfare Road into the existing access point into the Clarkson campus for the biomedical research facility. You see some existing buildings, some existing roads and infrastructure there. The proposed request is to the north of that area we just looked at. This is looking northwest from that same access point. The site's approximate location is shown in the background behind this existing building. This is the site plan. It's important to note that part of the site plan is in Davidson County, as I mentioned earlier. Part is in Forsyth County. The portion that's in Forsyth County is what is the heavier shaded and the colored image. The portion that's within Davidson County has been is grayed out, so to speak. So it's in the background. Again, this will function as one project. Again, part of it was in Davidson County, has already gone through their approval process. Should the Board of County Commissioners approve this today, we'll make sure that those plans reconcile with each other, and then they will come in and get their building permits through our office, since the majority of the building is located within our jurisdiction. In summary, the request represents an internally oriented expansion of a previously established high-tech biomedical research facility. The request is consistent with the recommendations of both Legacy 2030 and the Southwest Suburban Area Plan update. This was heard by the Planning Board at their October public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the request. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris? All righty, thank you. This is a public hearing, and speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor of the request and up to 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. So are anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Mark Isaacson. I'm an attorney with offices at 804 Green Valley Road in Greensboro. I have some materials I'd like to hand up for your review.
Clerk would be perfect. Thank you.
Try to be brief. As usual, Chris and his staff have done a great job of researching this, presenting it. We've worked closely with them on this project. I'm here on behalf of Wake Health, as you heard, and they own this property and have for many decades. It's currently a medical research campus called the Clarkson Campus. The first image you have here is what you've seen essentially from the staff. The area outlined in red is what would be additional building that would be built to allow additional medical research. The upshot of this is that due to the growth in this area, this organization has literally run out of space at their existing hospital facility in downtown Winston-Salem, so they would be relocating their medical research part from that building to this property, and we think it's a suitable location for the intended operations here or facility. As Chris indicated, this is a unique property. It straddles the line between Forsyth and Davidson counties. This project has already been through the process in Davidson County. It got a unanimous approval from the Davidson County commissioners, your counterparts. In fact, the only question that they had was, could we build the building in Davidson County and flip it so that the parking would be in Forsyth County? We politely declined that request and intend to build as shown on this plan. The next image you see is what you've seen before in the staff report. This is the intended improvements in the Forsyth County portion of the property. What you may not have seen so far are the next few pages, which are illustrative renderings of the building and the landscaping. I think fair to say that this would be a very nice addition to this property, heavily landscaped, very nice building materials. The next couple of images reflect that, and those are for illustrative purposes. Ty Rutledge with Wake Health is here, as well as Luke Dickey, our engineer from Stimmel, to answer any questions that you all may have. One last point, we did have two sets of neighborhood meetings, one in Davidson County, one in Forsyth County, but we sent out letters that are in the booklet there to well over the radius requirements, about 1,000-foot radius around the property, just to make sure that we addressed any questions that may come up. As Chris indicated, there were some concerns about the traffic on Welfare Road. This will really not increase the traffic. Approximately the same number of employees that are there now will continue to work there, about 27 employees. However, I think this prompted some review or request for review by NCDOT, and fortunately NCDOT paid attention to the request from us on behalf of Wake Health, and they are going to study the curve in this area and see what improvements NCDOT may need to make here, if any. With that, I don't want to take up too much time, but we're here to answer any questions, and we appreciate your consideration.
Good, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the request? I declare the public hearing closed. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve zoning map amendment F-1650 and statement of consistency with comprehensive plan. I move that the zoning map amendment F-1650, including site plan and special use district permit, be approved on the basis of the following. The proposed special use zoning map amendment as petitioned by Wake Forest University Health Science to rezone a 6.72 acre piece of property from IPS to IPS Industrial and Public Academic and Biomedical Research Facility Utilities is consistent with the recommendations of the Legacy Comprehensive Plan and reasonable are in the public interest because, number one, the subject property, undeveloped land, is located at 2105 Welfare Road and is adjacent to the Davidson County line and to properly zoned IPS and RS9 with adjacent uses of an academic and biomedical research facility, agriculture, and single-family homes. Number 2, the proposed PIS zoning is intended to accommodate public and institutional use which have a limited land use impact or traffic generation potential upon surrounding uses, concentrated service areas, and are located in or near residential areas or larger, less intensive recreation or institutional facilities in rural areas. Number 3, the proposed site plan features an academic and biomedical facility and has public water and sewer available. And 4, the subject property is located in Growth Management Area 4, is consistent with the Legacy Comprehensive Plan and the Southwest Suburban Area Plan update, which recommends institutional use, and the proposed use is consistent with the adjacent zoning and uses.
Is there a second? Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion further? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the meeting on November 21st, 2024. Have a motion. Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, do we have any cards or calls for the public session?
Mr. Chairman, we have one speaker card.
All right.
Paul Ford, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Paul Robeson Ford with Action for Equity, 1922 South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. I do want to thank the county manager for the clarification that this is the first of a series of votes that will have to take place over the coming years in order to do what we have been advocating to be done for years and years now, which is the building of a new Ashley Academy. So I want to thank this commission for this item number 7 that includes the $700,000 for design of a new Ashley. This is a long time coming, long overdue for the students and families of the Ashley Academy. We want to urge this commission to vote in favor of this amendment, and then, of course, to continue to maintain that support as this project continues, as the design is completed, as the estimates are confirmed and come in for the actual construction costs. The teachers, students, the families have been deserving this for a very, very long time. Action for Ashley, and thank you.
All righty. Mrs. County Manager, would you please continue with the remainder of the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners, staff, and guests. The agenda items before you have been briefed twice and hopefully questions answered. Agenda item number 7 is an amendment to the 2016 Schools Capital Project Ordinance. This agenda item provides $700,000 to fund design documents for Ashley Elementary in preparation for the upcoming bid process, closes out a previous appropriation for widening Robin Hood Road at Louisville Middle, and provides appropriations in line with required amortization of bond premiums associated with the 2023 B general obligation bonds.
Chairman, I move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McDaniel. Is there a second? Be happy to second that motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. All right.
Agenda item number 8 is an amendment to the 2022 Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools Capital Maintenance 2/3 Bonds Capital Projects Ordinance and transfer of funds for maintenance needs in the amount of $1,735,000. A list of the detailed projects was emailed to all of you this morning.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McDaniel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 9 is an amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate economic development incentive funding awarded by the state of North Carolina. This agenda item appropriates $675,000 of state funding for various grants for Excel Interior Door, Radel, and Foster Cabinets Company.
Is Is there a
Move to
motion?
approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 10 is an amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to increase revenues and appropriations for the Forsyth County Department of Public Health from the Community Nutrition Services, Women, Infants, and Children section of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. This appropriates an additional $247,739 to the WIC program.
I move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 11 is a resolution authorizing execution of a revenue agreement with Wake Forest University Health Sciences for the provision of food nutrition program outreach services and an associated amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate revenue received from Wake Forest University Health Sciences for food and nutrition program outreach services. Total revenue for the period of January 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2027 is not to exceed $90,337.
I move to approve, Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McDaniel,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 12 is a resolution authorizing execution of a revenue agreement with Partners Health Management for the provisions of non-clinical support of Family and Children's Division youth housed internally and an associated amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate revenue received from Partners Health Management for the provision of non-clinical support of Family and Children's Division youth housed internally. Total revenue is not to exceed $50,000 for fiscal year 25.
I move to approve, Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McDaniel. I'll be happy to second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 13 is a resolution authorizing execution of a hardware and software support, maintenance, and subscription agreement with Presidio Network Solutions, LLC, to maintain Forsyth County's essential data protection solution. This is a 3-year contract in an amount not to exceed $227,095.19.
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Vice Chair Wizenhunt,
Second.
second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 14 is a resolution awarding a contract for the purchase and installation of furniture for the Highland Avenue Center project in an amount not to exceed $215,512.
I move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Wizenhunt and Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise, yes.
I think I had a couple of questions from our second briefing about this company's MWB status. I can't recall if there was a response to that question.
Commissioner Woodbury, I actually did not hear what you said. Is your
Oh, sorry. I said, I
microphone's a
think from the second briefing, I had a question in regards to the MWB status, and I can't recall if Mr. Anderson was able to confirm the status of this company. Maybe he did, and I just don't recall, but just, to put on record if this was an MWB company or not would be helpful for me.
Commissioner Woodbury, I recall his response, last time was that they are not an MWBE company.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 15 is a resolution awarding and authorizing execution of a contract for the installation of an access control system for the Highland Avenue Center project in an amount not to exceed $114,743.61, and also authorizes the county manager to authorize change orders in an amount not to exceed $15,000.
I move to approve, Chairman.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel. Excuse me.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion?
Second. Second.
Yeah, I got the second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Maybe I didn't say Commissioner Linville loud enough. I thought I did. Second by Commissioner Linville. Okay.
Okay. Agenda item number 16 is a resolution awarding and authorizing execution of a contract for the purchase of equipment to upfit Ford Interceptor police pursuit vehicles. This upfits 15 vehicles in an amount not to exceed $102,902.21.
Your motion.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel.
Second, and discussion with the conversation that we had last week. However, the maze of bidding we get into from time to time, that's okay. Just make sure that we got the lowest bid every time in whatever we do.
Second by Commissioner Linville, and I appreciated Scott's discussion after the meeting last Monday. And it is clear that there are two. You got the North Carolina, state price contract, and then we got this other bidding consortium, and one vendor that is on both lists but is actually buying from some other vendors. I think we did determine that probably I guess, what is it, NC Batteries actually probably might be making a little money on that. But in any case, we don't know that. They're promising it's the best deal, but I think we agree there might be a better way to approach that in the future, but I think we're okay. Any other discussion on that?
I would just like to add about our method of going always with the lowest bid. And I definitely understand that premise on face value so that we are good stewards over the taxpaying citizens. But I do want us to also kind of assess that strategy as it relates. My mic went out. Does that strategy prevent us from considering reasonably MWB or hub businesses? And I think that that is going to call for, an assessment of the number of businesses that we're able to work with as a county, meaning MWB and hub. But I think that if the reason that we can't use those businesses because they don't generally have the lowest bid, I would, ask the commissioners to consider some type of, strategy that doesn't prevent them from being considered because they're not the lowest bid. And I don't know what that per se looks like, but I think that, we need to look into it. I guess that would be an exception up under certain conditions.
Could I ask the attorney, aren't we mandated to accept lowest bid?
Yes. Happy to look into it. I believe generally the state statutes require us to go with formal bidding or informal bidding, depending on the apparatus purchase, or one of the exceptions such as state purchasing contract, Sourcewell. But I'm happy to talk with Gordon and look into what other flexibility there is. But I believe generally Commissioner Wisenhunt is correct that most circumstances we are required to go with the lowest bidder for purchase of apparatus.
And I think the state legislature's intent of establishing goals for minority, employment of any, and they have defined it directly, is to actually strive towards doing that. And I do think the community college, I think our efforts are really to help, smaller, any contractor to try to be more competitive in bidding. And I think we have done, we bid, in fact, you could make an argument in this very bid we just discussed about parts. There are a lot of ways you can do that. And this actually gets down to a little more granular level that actually a smaller contractor could bid on some of those. You can submit and become a bidder on any of the consortia that exist. Or you can bid with a great big part supplier to do all your parts, and then you're dealing with a gigantic company and not doing it separately. So I think there are avenues available. I think everybody struggles, to try to make that available to help people bid competitively in that environment. So it's about intents and goals and working and but I do think the law is pretty clear on the low bid piece.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment. It seems like some reason or another I can say things that, without any intent, that causes conversation sometime. I have read, and I cannot remember where it is, where I read it, and it was in regard to the MWBE, what the state regulations are, and what we do, the county. And what I was reading, it's been a little while back, maybe a month or so, a couple months, and that the county is making efforts to be inclusive with everybody. I don't have any intention of trying to preclude anybody. Specifically, what was being discussed last week about this item, I don't think it really had anything to do with that one, with the MWBE. It was just a kind of a conglomeration of ways that people that was involved in the supplying what the county was in need of. That's really what that's all I was referring to.
I agree with you, Commissioner Linville. What I will say is that I just saw an opportunity to add my 2 cents about kind of the MWB piece, and maybe one of the reasons why in general we're not able to do more business with MWB and HUD because of the lowest bid piece, but I didn't mean to kind of insinuate that it's based on this particular item. I agree with you 100%. This is a kind of another type issue as it relates to the lowest bid, so I apologize if I kind of confused you on that. Thank you.
All righty. We're ready for item 17. I think we did vote on that.
I don't remember.
I'll ask the clerk, did we actually vote on item 16?
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion and second. You do need to vote.
All right, we're ready to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 17 is a resolution authorizing procurement of air pollution monitoring equipment from Teledyne API under an exception to the bidding laws codified in the Forsyth County Federal Procurement Policy, Section 1.7-2, for sole source purchases in an amount not to exceed $115,645.50.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Linville and Commissioner McDaniel. Any other discussion? Certainly glad we got the grant and glad we're getting the equipment. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda items 18 to 21 can be taken together. 18 is a resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor collector in the amount of $770.42. 19 is in the amount of $91.17. 20 is in the amount of $23,135.27. And 21 is in the amount of $45,345.16.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner Linville.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda items 22 to 27 are our reports. 22 is the August appropriations transfers report. 23 is the September appropriations transfers report. 24 is the October appropriations transfers report. 25 is the October financial report. 26 is the fuel surcharge franchise report. And 27 is the Workforce Development Week report.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Approval by Commissioner Linville.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
That is all the agenda items for the meeting, Mr. Chair.
All right. I move that we adjourn the regular meeting and that we begin our briefing for December. It's actually for December 19th. And we do have one discussion item today. We're going to hear an ARPA review on, that's kind of revenue and loss report. Actually, Kyle Haney is going to give us that, and we'll get a little update on all those items in case we need additional information for next week, which will be the longer briefing on this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So I know it has been a long road with the American Rescue Plan Act funds, and we are nearing a milestone. The board did take action back in November on the 21st that claimed the remaining revenue loss that we had and authorized the county manager's office to make a determination of where we should apply those funds that it created. So we wanted to present this to you, as the chair said, really to give you information before this report is finalized on at your meeting. So just to go a little bit in detail, since it has been such a long process, I will back in time. So the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law back on March 11th, 2021, with the purpose of providing a substantial infusion of resources to meet pandemic response needs and rebuild a stronger, more equitable economy as the country recovers. The county received $74,256,322 under the state and local fiscal recovery funds portion of that law. And those funds, the county allocated to a variety of internal and external costs and projects. If you recall, the county did hold 2 open application processes for local nonprofits as well as county departments to apply for these funds and had a selection process for those. Looking at the where we ended up, so through those processes, the commissioners funded 45 external projects, 15 internal projects, as well as provide premium pay for some county employees. There were some administrative costs for running those programs and staff. And then you can see at the bottom, there was over $20 million in the previous claimed revenue loss. And that equals the $74,256,322. We wanted to first start with where we are today. And by today, I mean probably last week. We've had some invoices come in since then, but we needed to stop at a point in time. So these really was where we were as of last Friday. You can see really taking out those other pieces, the premium pay, the administrative costs, and the revenue loss. Just looking at the external projects, you can see the budget there was $44,503,989.70. To date, last Friday, $32,981,553.29 was dispersed. And so there was still a little bit over $11.5 million remaining to be spent from these ARPA projects. And you can see down at the bottom, looking at the mix between external projects and internal projects, there are 18 projects that have been completed. 19 projects are ending on December 31st, 2024. So we have contracts with the subrecipients, or we have projects that are internal that will end at the end of this year. And there are 23 projects that had either the commissioners approved extensions or have been obligated if they're internal that will continue beyond the end of this year. That is important because under the ARPA rules, there is a deadline for all funds to be obligated, and that is the end of 2024, December 31st, 2024. Any funds that remain unobligated at that time must be returned to the federal government. So, for example, for an external project, if we have a contract with them and it ends on December 31st, 2024, and they have not spent all of the funds that were in that contract, we would have to return those dollars to the federal government. And additionally, any obligated funds that extend beyond the end of December 31st, 2024, that are unspent by December 31st, 2026, must also be returned to the federal government. So for instance, if the county has a contract for construction, it must be completed by December 31st, 2026, those funds must be expended. Same thing with subrecipients. If we have a subrecipient who has a contract that the board extended past December 31st, 2024, they would need to expend those funds before December 31st, 2026. And a major point of that is that funds cannot be reallocated to another project after December 31st, 2024. So for instance, if we had funded the subrecipient, their contracts beyond December 31st, 2024, and they are unable to spend the rest of those funds, we would have to return those to the federal government. So looking at just taking from the 2 slides ago, really the money that's outstanding that has not been spent to date, We can see on this chart, some of those funds remain unobligated. Those are internal projects. There's some funds that essentially have not been under contract yet, or that a project was completed under budget, so those funds remain unobligated. And then there's a number of projects where the projects are ending, both external and internal, by the end of this year. 1,797,315.87. And then there are some additional projects over here that are going to extend past December 31st, 2024. And I'm kind of building to the revenue loss piece of this and how we're going to apply that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So just trying to paint the picture here. So all external project funds are obligated. However, some funding, as you can see, must be spent by December 31st, 2024. And like we said, some of those internal project funds are unobligated at this point. So talking a little bit about the revenue loss. So the final rule allowed for local governments to replace lost revenue due to the pandemic and provide a calculation to determine the amount available. And so essentially you're going to say, we lost revenue, so we're going to apply this to salaries. This is what you've done previously with $20,324,496. Based off the calculation, we had another $6,800,823 that we could claim, and the board claimed that on November 21st. So what essentially that does is it frees up some general fund dollars that would be applied to these projects, so they would not have those ARPA restrictions on them. The resolution approved by the board allowed the county manager to allocate the reductions and report back to the Board of Commissioners no later December 19th, 2024. So during that time, since the board authorized that, staff has reviewed the current status of the ARPA projects and developed a strategy for ARPA reductions in alignment with mitigating the risk that we're going to have to give any of those funds back to the federal government. That is our goal, is not to have to give any of the funds back. We use the following priorities to determine those reductions. So first off, all unobligated funds, we would go ahead and place in revenue loss, because if those are not placed in revenue loss, then we would have to give them back December 31st, 2024. We would have to apply revenue loss reductions to obligated external projects ahead of obligated internal projects, simply because we have more control over spending the money. If we've given this money to a subrecipient, we can't control if they spend the money or not. And then when deciding which external organizations would remain in ARPA funding past December 31st, 2024, we would prioritize the organizations with established county partnerships, who have spent significant ARPA funds toward their budget, and have longer terms on their contracts, so they have more time to spend those funds. So here once again is that last chart we saw, which is all of the outstanding funds by those different categories. You can see first we have the $878,094.48 that remain unobligated. So that would be the first thing that we would propose is moved into revenue loss. Second, we have the $1,073,207.22 of projects that are external projects that end the end of this month. If they do not spend those funds, if those funds are not spent, they would have to go back to the federal government. So that was the second thing that we proposed move into revenue loss. And then the third thing that we proposed moving revenue loss is those external projects that extend past December 31st, 2024. So their contracts are beyond that date, but there's still money to spend. Once again, because we do not control their ability to spend those. We control the internal projects, but not those. So if you look at the math down here, all of the unobligated, all of the external projects that end at the end of this month, and then a portion of the projects that have contracts that extend past the end of this month, because we do not have enough revenue loss to claim all of that. What does that look like? So if this is the strategy that the board chooses to pursue, and that we would have remaining in ARPA funding $724,108.65 in internal projects that would need to be expended by the end of the year. Those are really two different projects, and we know that they are going to be expended by the end of the year. We have $1,956,392.62 from external projects that will be extended past December 31st, 2024. And you can see below, those are really three different projects. It's the Arts Council of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., and Horizons Residential Care Center. They all had very large ARPA budgets, and they have had significant spending towards those. They're all organizations who we have had partnerships with, and you can see they have had extensions by this board. They have a significant amount of time left to expend those funds. And then there is $2,041,112.14 in internal projects that extend beyond the end of this year. And so those are all really projects that are either construction projects where we are obligated to funds. We have a contract. This doesn't include change order money. This is the construction contracts that we have under contract, and the Small Business IDA program where we also have that under contract as well. So we feel very confident that we will be able to spend those funds beyond December 31st, 2024. I did not include all of the projects on this presentation. You do have that at your seats, a spreadsheet that shows every project and where the funding sources are. So what amount has been moved into revenue loss, what amount remains in ARPA, and that total budget. But we really wanted to highlight, what is the risk, and here are the different projects that would continue to be ARPA funded. So they would still have to meet those requirements. The implications of this is that all projects will continue according to the terms of the contract, regardless of the funding source. It's not going to change the terms of the contract. It's not going to change the end date, the budget amount, or the performance measures. We're going to continue to expect the performance metrics to be met, and we'll continue to monitor these projects, whether they end at the end of this month or going forward, and whether they are still ARPA or if they're funded with revenue loss. As projects funded through revenue loss are completed, we will identify whether the full budget was utilized or there were unutilized funds, and if there were unutilized funds, they will return to the county general fund. And then if an internal project has ended and has unspent funds, those funds will revert to the county general fund. Or if there are internal projects that are ongoing but haven't obligated all their funds yet, and they'll be moved into revenue loss, those projects will continue with now the revenue loss funds. And I will just note that this is a moving target. We've gotten a lot of invoices in the last week that will be spent. So, we're going to add some more to that dispersed category. So we may make some adjustments before next week, but I think we're going to cut it off at next week so we have that final report for you to consider at that time. I know that was a lot of information, a lot of numbers. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
So it appears we will not be reverting any money to the
That
federal
is
government.
absolutely the goal, and we feel pretty confident about that.
It's good. Appreciate the update and the good work on that.
Just a sidebar conversation, Chairman, if I may. Chantel, you don't have to answer this question today. However, I needed to know when the project for Highland Avenue was supposed to conclude.
Which one? We have a lot happening on
you
Highland
don't,
Avenue.
yeah.
So
I see the auditorium was on here, and I thought that should be.
I'm going to let Denise provide an update on all things Highland.
Sure. So the auditorium is coming along very nicely. It has been completely gutted, painted. We made final selections on the seating today. The stage has been built out to be ADA compliant. So that project is coming along beautifully. It's really a gorgeous space. You should stop by and see it sometime. The Highland Avenue Center, which is across the street, which is partially funded with these dollars and partially funded through the $12.5 million in crisis funding we received from the state, is coming along as well. It is actually scheduled to be complete mid-January. Okay. Then we'll be waiting for a certificate of occupancy, and for the facility-based crisis center, which is the 12-bed unit that's new to that space to build out our crisis services, the licensure process will begin at that point in time. So today you are approving things like the furniture. It's moving along very nicely as well. There is work happening at DSS as well, as you're aware, and that too is progressing nicely. We're at the point of being able to move along with it. The public health work, I believe, is not ARPA funded, but is PAYGO funded. But just so you know, we had gotten some information we needed just this week that will allow us to take the next step. There's also some beautification that's going to be occurring that has not yet started, but is on our radar. So I see the work. I just needed to know. I know that there's timelines on this, and it looks like you've extended it through 2026, so we're good. Okay. That's correct. Yeah.
And most of our projects are scheduled, most of them are scheduled to be done in 2025.
I gotcha. All right.
And while I have the mic, I'd just like to say this too. We have taken very good care of fire and EMS in the past, and I would love to see Health and Human Services get some support. I mean, they are on fire and they need support in this community. It has a trickle-down effect. If we don't support them, we need more support with our fire departments and our schools, and that's just going to be something that I'm going to be eyeing for the next couple of years. So if we can support them, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I would like to just extend what Commissioner McDaniel is saying as it relates to the support of Health and Human Services. I was able to visit, I think, the environmental safety group under the leadership of Daniel Lemon, and his staff was so very gracious to show me around that department and to help me to understand the implications of when they don't have sometimes the appropriate staff that they need and some of the other challenges that they are happy to face on behalf of the citizens. But I applaud their work as also true servants of this community.
Thank you, Commissioner McDaniel. They will be pleased to hear you say that. And Commissioner Woodbury, sorry.
So you ready to review the items for the briefing for coming up for the 19th?
Okay, agenda item number 1 is a zoning petition of Charles William Pettit, the Pettit Revocable Trust from AG and RS20 to RS20. This was continued from the November 21st meeting. Chris Murphy, our planning director, will brief this item.
I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. We did hold the public hearing a few weeks ago, and this was continued with the public hearing closed at that previous meeting, again, holding the decision. Again, just briefly, this is down close to the county line. Again, it is a general use request from a little sliver, just this little sliver right here of existing RS20 and the remaining piece being AG, all to RS20. So essentially looking at about doubling the number of units, 43 to 86. Again, general use request, don't know what's going to happen. At that meeting, at the public hearing, there were some questions and some things that the board asked staff to look into. We communicated with both NCDOT and County Fire, specifically related to the county, the state provision in the fire code dealing with the number of homes accessed via a single entrance. And given the language in the statute and whether or not that would be cumulative with the existing 1950s era subdivision, and therefore if this were rezoned and had 83 lots, would that put them over the threshold of having more than 100 homes on a single access? County Fire indicated that based on practice and their understanding of the fire code, that would not trigger that provision, and this could be approved. So I wanted to make sure I brought that forward. It would not require the second remote means of access. They would still have to provide the interconnectivity. The stub street that is along Langdon would still have to be connected, but that would not meet that remote two means of exterior access. And again, it would not be required because it would not be looked at cumulatively, but this would be looked at on its own. Similarly, staff reached out to NCDOT with a kind of hypothetical question. Obviously, we know that this is a general use request, so you don't have a site plan to react to, but the site plan that the property owners shared at their neighborhood meeting did have a subdivision with 86 homes. If that were to be developed, what would your recommendations be? And do you have any comments on this general use request? And the information we got back from Scott Jones with NCDOT, he is the division engineer, said that they do have and acknowledge that there are concerns with the traffic volumes along Thomasville Road, but under their authority, since that would be off-site, they could not require any improvements to the Thomasville Road Southland intersection as part of this request, because it would be considered an off-site exaction, essentially. On the flip side of that, if this were to come through as a special use district request, if they were to submit a site plan and they would be able to review the plan and come up with recommendations on things that could be done to make the case better, to make the traffic flow better, including improvements to Langdon, Southland, Furman, and that intersection, that they could make recommendations, and then the elected body could recommend those as conditions of approval. Obviously, the developer would have to agree to those. I say all that, and again, you're going to be considering this on the 19th. We've already had the public hearing. That's kind of what I would say the parameters are. It can go forward as is, and you can make the determination if you feel like that through the special use district rezoning request, if they were to submit a site plan and you would be able to impose conditions that the developer would have to agree to, but if that was something that you feel like you could get on board with, that may be the avenue to go down, would be to recommend that they withdraw and bring it back through as a special use district request. Otherwise, you could just take the case and vote it up or down as is. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
I've got just a couple questions. One that I've been thinking about, because you sent us a memo about the 100, that our county fire review, the fire review said that would be independent, that 100 acres would be, 100 home deal is not an issue, doesn't impact, even though there's a smaller subdivision below with a single outlet. If you just think about that hypothetically, picture a neighborhood of 50 homes built 40 years ago, accessing a major thoroughfare. There's a lot of vacant land behind it. So another developer comes along and does, 100 home subdivision, and it would be okay, even though 150 homes now are accessing that road. And then picture another few years later, another 100 homes is built in that with access through the other one. And then another 100 homes built later. You could end up with a cascading 350 homes or more trying to get out in one place, and that would somehow or another be allowed. I remember when you told us that the state legislature changed that, because it used to not be this 100 homes, it used to be 30. And so when that was changed, we kind of scratched our head a little bit, but what is that? I mean, I think there's some interpretation. I heard you use the word today, interpretation. And what do you mean they interpret it? I mean, what does the law say about that? Because if the law is silent to that, it seems to me the interpretation may be one of, we're going to interpret this now as a 130 home subdivision, and you're going to have another egress or entrance.
Mr. Chairman, what I would say is we can get County Fire to be here next week. I know that's where Chris is going. And we'll talk to County Fire and get with the attorney's office as well to discuss the interpretation before next week.
I do know that you're exactly right. I don't know whether it has to do with the age of the subdivision. I know that they would not, when I say they, County Fire, City Fire, if someone brought in something and they phased it and said, we're going to do 99 homes today, and then they got that approved and then came back through 2 years later and says, we're going to do another 99 homes. I can't answer interpretation. I can't answer, that's what we got back from County Fire, but I can say it probably has something to do with just the age of this and the fact that this was approved in the 50s and 60s, and now we're looking at something new today. There wasn't a requirement then. This requirement is in the ordinance, or is in the code now, in the state code. It might have something to do with that, but I don't want to answer for them. But I certainly understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that bothers me. And I guess, and the other part I think you made clear, I mean, I actually think, I kind of hear a reticent, I kind of hear like NCDOT, I understand what they're saying. If it's special, if it's going to be, when they have to comment on a site plan, then they can provide those upgrades. Because what we've heard, that's a very difficult intersection. It's a difficult intersection today. You put 80 homes with an average of probably 1.5 cars, 2 cars, and put another 150, 100 something cars into that same, holy cow, that's going to be a mess. That's really a mess. And I feel for the folks that came and spoke to us, about that in the hearing, that something doesn't seem to be right about that. Doesn't seem like government's looking out for their best interest. But I think if there were improvements required of the developer to do that, that'd be great. On the other hand, they could actually build 40 homes, I mean, I guess, 43 homes
Today.
right now with nothing. And so from that standpoint, I mean, it's kind of like take a gamble of whether the other gets fixed in the future to come back through it, and then they'll say, well, we're done with this, we're going to put 43 homes and we'll move on. And now there'll be that traffic level. So it's kind of a tough, it is a tough situation, but I really feel for them and feel that interpretation is problematic to me. We'll hear that next week.
I have a couple questions too. Before I ask the question, I'm going to offer observation. Yesterday, there is a reason for all of the traffic situation that we have here in Forsyth County. Well, yesterday, I hadn't got to it, but I knew I needed to for today, so I visited the zoning site that we just addressed. And I knew just about where it was, but didn't know precisely, but I got there. And that was an area that I've been through there a lot of times, I just hadn't been by there lately. Well, you just, right there at Germantown is where county line crosses Stokes County and Forsyth. Right there close to former manager. I thought about going by and see him, but I was just so busy I had to get back to the farm. So I apologize to him for not doing that later, or I just won't tell him I was close by. So
He's probably watching the meeting. Now he knows.
So I know what's over there in Stokes County, but anybody that don't know what's over there, Miss Wissenhunt knows what's over in Stokes County. You just drive by there and you can see just not much traffic going on. Well, in a place like, I don't have to tell most of you this or any of you, we just don't look at why it is. You look at Forsyth County, all of these things that we have, all of these places that there are to work, and the county still gets criticized for what it does, but still, that's why there is more people here. It's not just the people that's raised up here, it's people coming from many places. That's any of you that don't get out of Forsyth County very often, it's not far over to Stokes County. Just go by there sometime. Just go on the edge of it down there at Germantown, Walnut Cove. That'll give you a pretty good idea. You won't have to go on up there to see the rest of it. So that's, and probably some parts of Davidson County like it. But you can't find them as easy as you can at Stokes. But at any rate, that aside, I'd asked Chris about the traffic on 109, and he did tell me that the volume right now is about 12,000. He didn't have the capacity number, and he was going to get that for somebody. And whenever he does, if he don't already have that, we need to look at that. And if what we're considering or asked to be considering turned out to make the situation worse, then we ought to give some other thoughts about it. But these things not going away. They're just going to keep on coming as time goes by, because you've got older subdivisions, and in most cases, land that has been most suitable as what has been developed first. And the other, particularly in residential areas, where going back and finding places and filling in, you got these places behind what was already put in place. And we all ought to remember, every one of us that drives a vehicle contributes to the traffic situation. One equally, it's all equally. If you drive a few more miles, then you're causing a little more of it. But we just don't look at that close enough, but we need to. But nevertheless, we got this at hand, and we do need to look at that traffic situation closer and see what the capacity is whenever you get it, or you may have it now.
I told you I would check the staff report, and I'd forgotten to, but I did check it, but we don't have it because it doesn't have access onto 109, so it's not in our staff report. The access is via Furman Road, which we don't have traffic counts on. I will get you what the capacity is. I'll reach back out to
The capacity
Scott
is 109.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's not in the staff report because it's not technically on 109, so we don't have it in the staff report, but I'll get that information.
Well, I think it would help us with this situation, this particular one.
That's good. Any more questions for Chris? Thank you.
Agenda item number 2 is a public hearing on an ordinance amending chapters 3 and 10 of the Unified Development Ordinance to revise Board of Adjustment procedures.
Good afternoon again. Seems like I've said that a lot today. This is a text amendment proposed by planning staff to amend chapters 3 and 10 of the UDO to revise some zoning Board of Adjustment procedures, as well as a couple other technical cleanups. Chapter 160D of the general statutes contains regulations governing development in municipalities and counties within the state. 160D 406 includes specific standards for quasi-judicial proceedings, such as those used by the city and county boards of adjustment. Section 160D 406 requires variances to be approved by a 4/5 majority, while other BOA decisions must be approved by a simple majority. The current UDO language for the city and county processes is not consistent with these statutes. I will tell you the language in the ordinance isn't consistent. The practices that have been used before the boards of adjustment are correct. The ordinance was just never changed to reflect the statute. So again, we're cleaning it up. As such, staff is proposing this text amendment to clarify these provisions in the UDO. Additionally, there are some minor changes to our requirements to address inconsistencies for what's required on certain types of site plans. And then also replacing the title. There's titles in the UDO for inspections director, for planning director. Our departments were merged 11 years ago, so we need to get it changed to where it references Director of Planning and Development Services. So that's the other change. I'm not going to go into all the details per se, but again, in summary, this amendment will ensure that the UDO regulations are consistent with the state enabling statutes. We'll clarify the requirements for different applications, and again, change the title of my title. And staff recommended approval. This did go to the planning board back in July. There were no speakers in opposition, and following the public hearing, the planning board did vote unanimously to recommend approval. It was a little bit slower getting to council because with these changes, there were also some changes that went that just went to the city that dealt with making the city board of adjustment the stormwater appeals board. So there were some changes to the city code that also had to be made. So anyway, that went in for approval in September, and it's now coming to y'all for your consideration of the county part. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris?
Agenda item number 3 is Mr. Murphy's as well. It's a public hearing on the zoning petition of NCCL 6220-40-80 Clementine Drive LLC from LI to GIS.
Yes, this is a request to rezone 5.49 acres located at the southeast intersection of Clementine Drive and Clover Drive over just to the south of Clemens. The request is for special use rezoning request from LI to GIS. The proposed uses, the majority of the uses are allowed in LI that they are asking for. So the existing LI uses, but they are asking specifically for manufacturing C, and specifically NAICS 325 chemical manufacturing and NAICS 327 non-metallic mineral product manufacturing. That was what they had originally asked for. I'm going to get to a change that was made. Eventually, they did agree to limit that to just 325998, I believe is the NAICS code. Again, subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map in GMA 3. It is there in Clemens, just to the west of, I believe, Hampton. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. It is within an existing light industrial park. I want to say this park began construction in the 1970s. I believe these two buildings have been sitting vacant for a number of years, so they are going through the process to try to rezone them to attract a tenant who I believe does some chemical additives that are put into a concrete operations. They're not manufacturing concrete out here, but it is some additives that's put into concrete. Subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. Again, you see it is a existing industrial area. Again, most of those are light industrial and warehousing. There is no manufacturing C in the area. The area plan does have an industrial recommendation. Again, it is currently zoned LI, so that does make sense. But it doesn't really talk about the intensity of the industrial in the area plan. It just gives a general recommendation for an industrial type use, again, which is consistent with the existing LI. Just some site photos. This is looking southwest along Clementine Drive. The subject property is to the left. Again, those are the two existing buildings that are there. This is looking southwest at the subject property where the accessory container unit will be placed. There is a container unit that they want to put out here. It is like a self-contained storage building where the chemical mixture will be stored and will be piped into the building. This is looking north from the subject property across Clementine Drive. The subject property is in the foreground. This is looking southwest at the intersection of Clementine Drive and Hampton Road. Again, this is several hundred, if not 1,000 feet further to the west. This is the site plan. This is a blow up. This is the area where this is the only addition that they are proposing. They are proposing this storage container that would house the chemicals. Again, exterior container area, blowing up a little bit more. This is how that container would be fenced from view. While this request would facilitate new industrial activity within an existing business park, the request is inconsistent with Legacy 2030 recommendations to minimize off-site impacts of high-intensity land uses. The proposed manufacturing C uses may generate noise, odor, dust, vibration, or other off-site impacts on nearby residents. Approval of this request could lead to future requests for additional manufacturing C uses on site and additional requests for GI zoning on nearby properties. I am remiss in that whenever I was talking about the surrounding area, again, you have this LI RS9 line here. This is the latest, newest phase of Peppertree. And if you look at this image, you see that the 500-foot notification area actually comes onto 3 or 4 of those properties. So again, we are very close to an existing residential neighborhood. Again, they bought there knowing that there was industrial, but it was light industrial. So again, I did want to go back and cover that since that was one of the keys under the summary. Hearing that, and I just realized I made a mistake, and I will update that. The recommendation by the planning board was for approval after they agreed to further limit their use to just the 525.998 NAICS code, which is specifically dealing with chemical additives for concrete. This was sort of an iterative process, dealing with the attorney for the subject property. They kept claiming that they had some non-disclosure things where they were making it hard for us to get information. Again, we eventually got it down at the public hearing before the planning board is where they actually told us what their NAICS code was. They told us what the chemical was. It is a type of acid that, again, gets added to this concrete, and it's used in the concrete production. There were 2 folks that did speak in opposition. But anyway, following the public hearing, the planning board did vote to recommend approval by a 5-2 vote. So there were 2 folks on the planning board that did vote in opposition to the recommendation. And actually, I'll get you a revised PowerPoint.
Can you send us a little more description about that, what you just read? I have no idea what that number, about this acid, what it is?
I will try.
gonna be
Again,
added
it may be that it's gonna be up to the attorney. Again, they have not been very forthcoming on information. Again, it's kind of been an iterative process. They've been easy to work with as far as communicative, but not providing us necessarily with the information we needed to make a decision on some of these things. Again, I think from a staff perspective, we have concerns that the precedent of the GI would set here, especially with the use manufacturing C, as close to these properties are. But I'll see what I can get from the attorney.
And within the facility, is there going to be additional kind of ventilation required of some sort? I'm trying to get at, if you're, with the winds blowing and you live that close, what kind of air is going to blow out of a
Yeah, and again, that's one of those things that at this point probably hasn't even been thought about by the petitioner. But again, they would have to go through the process to, obviously upfit that building. But again, that's early in the process. They haven't talked to our building and mechanical folk. But yes, I'm sure there would be between fire and the review by our building mechanical, electrical, plumbing inspectors, there would be requirements for ventilation.
So that picture that you had of the outside where basically the acid's going to be surrounded by this fence, it looks like it is in concrete. And is it a steel? What is that material on that? Go back, I think it's what are those made out of?
That's a fence.
I know, but what is it made out of? How penetratable? I mean, if you got something that's hazardous, and if somebody gets into that area, is it made out of what? You know what I'm saying? I mean, is it a fence?
A container.
I understand that.
Okay.
Is a fence something like a chain link fence you can see through and see it, or is it something that is solid that basically you're not going to get into it?
I'm not sure what the material is. It would be screened. You wouldn't be able to see the container.
I'm thinking more about other people.
It's more than likely not a security fence in the sense that you more than likely could very easily cut it and get into it.
So if you can get into it, you can't get damaged by this, acid. I suspect anything that has the word acid to it does connotate that might be dangerous, and might have to be posted with lots of decals on it and some of that kind of stuff. And people go over and say, wouldn't it be cool to break into this and see what's in this little box here?
Chris, I think on the drawing it did say chain link fence on the next slide.
Yeah, it definitely says chain link, but again, there is, that's more than likely a solid panel that's over that then prevents you from being able to see it, because you can't use metal slats and those kind of things as far as screening goes. But again, it's definitely a metal fence, but with panels on it that prevent you from seeing into it. But I'm sure you could easily get into it.
I don't know. That's messy. I kind of read something in the newspaper about this, as I recall, article, and as I recall, the planning department was quoted as saying, well, there's some other places that, manufacturing see that the GI places where this could go, and I assume that there was some reason why people didn't consider the other places that they could go.
I believe that the attorney that represents the client represents the property owner, and these buildings have been vacant for a while. So again, I think they're trying to get someone into their buildings. It's not, the attorney is not representing the end user. The attorney is representing the property owner who's trying to get tenants into the building.
No, he's not representing the tenant. But there is a tenant. There's a prospective tenant.
And they have not even disclosed the name.
And the prospective tenant could obviously go somewhere else.
Correct.
Well, you're saying, if I understood it correctly, it was the planning staff was asking for information to see specifically what it was somebody wanted to do. Is that correct? And
yeah, I mean, again, we always want to get as much information as we can because it helps us through the process. It helps us understand things. It helps us understand what, you may think you're a use that you really aren't. So the more information we have, we can better categorize you. We finally got enough information out of them to determine you're either going to be in NAICS code 325, which is chemical manufacturing, or NAICS 327, which is non-metallic mineral product manufacturing, because they told us it was related to concrete and concrete additives, but they didn't tell us exactly what it was. As we actually got to the planning board meeting, they actually had some some photos, I think they may be included in your packet, that shows a bin of, I want to say it's acetic acid, 60% acetic acid. So they provided those photos. That immediately told us, okay, this is what it is. And then we looked it up in the NAICS, and they're like, you are 325,988. I think that's the number. It's in the special use permit. But that's how we actually got the specific use, was at the planning board meeting. Again, they didn't give us a lot of information up front. That's why I'm not exactly sure what kind of information you're going to be able to get out of the attorney. Again, you can ask them, but again, it's been a very difficult process for us to get the information we feel like we need. That didn't lead to the denial recommendation. The denial recommendation from a staff perspective dealt with the fact that we don't feel like this is an appropriate area for GI, given the close proximity to the residential homes and some of the issues that obviously you're more familiar with than I am. But those were our concerns. But again, it was also difficult because we didn't feel like we were getting the information we needed to help make an educated decision as well.
It's one of those things, the definition of GIS, there's a whole lot of things on there that would not be a problem. If it were 500 feet to 1,000 from a neighborhood, it would not be a problem. But there are some who could be things that could be big problem, I could see being a big problem. And I think that's the dilemma. And when you approve something to GI, it can be any one of those things, and there's some things in there that could be problematic near a neighborhood.
Well, if there's information, if it's secret information to a product that someone is making, that sort of sounds like what it is. It's something that's additive. It goes into something. You say concrete. Hard to say exactly what that is. They use different additives in concrete to cause it to supposedly be better. But if there's information that we need about what would take place here, and if we're not able to get all the information we feel like we need, then that can be taken into consideration as far as making a decision, couldn't it, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir. That's good. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before you sit down, there's an item number 4 we have coming up, which is talking about legislative goals. By next week, would you provide us the change in that most recent legislation about the impact on planning and zoning that was actually just included in the last veto override that you have mentioned? It's like the last page of that has to do with just restricted changes in planning and zoning. You know what I'm talking about?
I can, or perhaps Gordon can. Gordon and I have discussed it. I just want to make sure his reading of it was the same as the city attorney's reading of it. And for those that aren't aware, there was a provision in the Helena relief bill in the very last page of it that basically said that local governments can't downzone property that's non-residential. So if you have a commercial piece of property, you can't downzone someone's property without their permission. Which there's been a provision in there, but it doesn't allow a private citizen to downzone someone else's property. This now would prohibit a local unit of local government from being able to do that. The other thing that was also included in that says that you can't propose a text amendment that then creates a nonconformity, whether it be a nonconforming situation, like a sign ordinance, a parking standard that then makes a business nonconforming. You can't eliminate uses from zoning districts, from commercial zoning districts, because you would be taking away a right that someone currently has. Anyway, that's what was included in the bill. So I'll defer to Madam Manager on that. It may be better coming from Gordon since it's truly a legal opinion. But again, I know he is in agreement with the city attorney's office that is in fact what that bill does.
Because it seems to me that I spoke with one of our legislators a little bit about this, and it just seems like that is take a big local control issue and taking away things that should be important to be regulated by those who are closest to it. And I kind of asked him, that bill had to be voted on up or down. So a lot of things got added in there, one of which has to do is going to increase our cost of elections, for example. There are things that got added in that I think impact counties negatively. And if the legislature wants to do some of them, on the ones that deal with money, they need to pay for it. And on the ones that don't, they need to stay out of things that are kind of, they're supposed to believe in local control on certain things. That's why we have this level of government. And actually the advice I got from him was that if a lot of counties thought that this was a problem issue, then that has a tendency to impact legislators, and it can be changed in the future. And perhaps if we look at those and even this election issue, that maybe we need to be putting some things, maybe we need to be putting that in our legislative goal issue, and probably should be in future NCACC issues and talk about it. And we've had several commissions over the years send us letters that their commissioners have adopted this and want to let everybody know about it. And we could do the same thing, because these are just things that I think that, they're just, I don't know. I think one person must have a bee in their bonnet about something, and all of a sudden it gets thrown into an omnibus boat up or down deal, and that just kind of things, to me, that just is bothersome. And anyway, if you'd help us with that one thing, and we'll get Gordon to talk about it next week while we're talking about this.
We'll figure out a solution.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll be quiet for the rest of the meeting.
The remaining agenda items will be fully briefed next week. Agenda item number 4 is a resolution approving legislative goals and submission of such goals to the North Carolina General Assembly. I did email you all a draft this morning. Definitely take a look. Whatever changes, anything you want to add, but our goal will be to try to get some consensus and narrow it down. So Gordon or I will tag team that next week. Agenda item number 5 are meeting minutes. Number 6 is an amendment to the 2022 Blues Lake Park Capital Projects Ordinance to appropriate $137,754.02 in interest earnings related to funding received from the State Capital Infrastructure Fund. Agenda item number 7 is an amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate $1 million from reserve fund balance for economic development projects previously approved by the board. Agenda item number 8 is an amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate fund balance to cover prior year encumbrances for fiscal year 24, and an amendment to the emergency telephone system special revenue fund fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate fund balance to cover prior year encumbrances for fiscal year 24, and an amendment to the Law Enforcement Equitable Distribution Fund. Agenda item number 9 is an amendment to the 2022 County Capital Maintenance 2/3 Bonds Capital Projects Ordinance, and an amendment to the 2022 Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools Capital Maintenance 2/3 Bonds CPO, and an amendment to the 2022 Forsyth Tech Community College Capital Maintenance 2/3 Bonds CPO. Agenda item number 10 is an amendment to the 2023 Housing Grants Project Ordinance. Number 11 is an amendment to the 2021 Justice Assistance Grant Project Ordinance. Agenda item number 12 is a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a grant from the Winston-Salem Foundation awarded to Forsyth County Cooperative Extension for improvements to the Arboretum at Tanglewood Park, and an associated budget ordinance to appropriate the dollars. Agenda item number 13 is a resolution ratifying and authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement between Forsyth County and the City of Winston-Salem regarding the shared use of FY24 JAG funds and an adoption to appropriate those funds. Agenda item number 14 is a resolution authorizing execution of an assignment of hangar lease at Smith Reynolds Airport from Mount Aero Properties to Signature Flight Support, and authorization to amend existing second consolidated and restated lease agreement. Agenda item number 15 is a resolution awarding and authorizing execution of a contract for brokerage services to NAI Piedmont Triad LLC. That is for the Hall of Justice. Agenda item number 16 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to the agreement with Farragut Systems for North Carolina Property Tax System software. Agenda item number 17 is a resolution authorizing purchase of cameras for the Highland Avenue Center project. Number 18 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to the guaranteed maximum price agreement with Frank L. Bloom Construction Company for the Highland Avenue Park project. And number 19 is a resolution authorizing execution of amendments to agreements for transportation assistance for elderly and disabled residents. We have one property matter, a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement with Youth Haven Services for lease of county-owned real property located at 5560 Sturmer Park Circle. Several appointments. Madam Clerk, when do the appointments close?
Appointments close on Monday at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Agenda item number 36 is a resolution extending the year 25 tax listing period, and then we have several reports. That's all of our items that we will fully brief next week.
Good, thank you. We are, this afternoon, we have a reception at 4:30 with, starting, I guess, 4:30 to 6:30, inviting members of our actually committees to actually come and just say thank you, and we'll look forward to that. Appreciate their service. We're adjourned.